Hey crafty friends, it's Jeannie and today I'm sharing two cards for a collaboration between Ink on 3 and Thermoweb. I had a general idea of what I was going to create with these products but ended up using some, but not all, and sometimes that happens where I have an idea of what I'm going to use and end up with something slightly different, and that's okay. I wanted to create a background using Ink on 3's Wavy stencil with Deco foil transfer gel dual, which is a gel that can be used two ways, with heat or without heat. And I haven't used this before, so I wanted to use it both ways just to see if I had a preference of whether I like it with heat or without heat and the differences between both. So I add the transfer gel dual to the stencil, and I'm using the stencil pal to evenly spread it out. And I normally use a palette knife to spread out any type of paste or glitter with my stencils, but I am loving this stencil pal. It just spreads everything out so evenly. It comes two in a pack and I think it's pretty awesome. You just clean it off just like a normal stencil. Once you're done, bring it to the sink with warm water and some soap, and you just rinse it. Because I was creating two backgrounds, I needed to do this twice. I had to set these aside to dry a bit. I think I set it aside for a little over an hour. I do think that I might have been a little generous with the gel because it did seem a little thick. For the stamp images, I am using Ink on 3's BeYOUtiful stamp set, and the first set I am stamping out with Fadeout Ink. For my second set, I'm using Blackout Ink, which is a hybrid ink used for both alcohol markers and watercolors. To clean off my stamps, I'm using Ink on 3's Ink Off Stamp Cleaner, which is a stamp cleaner in a stamp pad. And all I do is I wipe off the excess ink, I'll ink up the stamps with the cleaner, and then I'll go back in with the cloth and wipe it clean. For my first set of florals that I stamped using Blackout ink, I am going in and blending colors onto them using the Ink on 3 Atelier inks. For the flowers, I'm using My Jam Purple and Peacock Blue, and for the stems and leaves, I'm using Goddess Green and Twiggy Brown. It's just an easy way to ink these two up without really coloring them. I'll go ahead and fussy cut with outline all the little images, and those are ready to go once I have my background panel ready. For my second set of stamped images, I am using some Copic markers to color this up. I am doing a no-line coloring technique. When I no-line color, I like to go in with my darkest Copic marker to add the shadows just so I know where they are. Fadeout ink is really light, but it also absorbs the color that's placed on top of it. So it works really, really well, and you won't see the Fadeout ink once you color on top of it. So I know that this flower looks super gray right now, but once I put it up against color, it'll look white. And the key to white flowers is to leave some of the floral uncolored. So because I'm coloring on white cardstock, I'm making sure that I'm leaving a significant part of this floral untouched. I'll go in and blend with 3 Copic colors mainly, and I will go in with a very dark C5 just to add a little bit more dimension where I need it. So I'm doing the same thing with all the other florals. I'm just going in with my darkest shade first to let me know where all the shadows are, and then I'll blend it out. And I do the same thing with the greens, which I color up the leaves, the stems, and I'll go in with my darkest color just because it's easier for me to be able to see where the shadows should be, and I'll work around that. So a lot of people color that way anyway, where they'll go in either from the lightest to the darkest or darkest to lightest. And I think that the easiest way for me to no line color is just darkest to lightest and blend out as needed. So it's a pretty simple process, and it does take some practice, but it's really fun because the floral images or any images that you do no line coloring with look really soft and pretty. And the one cool thing about this particular stamp set is that stamen in the middle of the flower is a separate stamp, in the stamp set, and you can go ahead and stamp it like I did using the Goddess Green Atelier ink, and I just went in with a Copic marker to add a little bit of dimension. Some time has passed and I am going to use Deco foil transfer sheets in both Rainbow and Iridescent. I just wanted two different shades, like one that's just bright and colorful and one that's just simple and holographic. So I'm trimming them down to cover my two card panels, and I think that there are pretty generous sizings in the sheets. For the first panel, I'm running it through my Mink machine, and that will be the heat option, and I think it looked really good. So once I just ran it through it, I just lifted it off. It was clean, things stuck, and I think that I might have gotten a little thick with the gel because it looked a little smushed in one area, but that's okay because I can cover it up with that large floral. But as you can see, the large floral against the rainbow makes it look white, so it's really cool. For my second card panel, I actually go in with a die cut machine, and I definitely think I went a little thick with this gel because it kind of squished in the middle. So because it was my first time using it, I just have to be a little less generous with adding the gel. For the first card panel, I will be trimming it down 1/4 of an inch on the top and the side, and I'll be matting it on a piece of green cardstock because I thought that it just went well with the green leaves that were on the flowers. Once I mat it on there, I'll be adhering all my little pieces, and I think I stamped out every single image from the stamp set, and that's enough to really build up this flower. It has the leaves and it has a few of the smaller florals, and it just looks like a complete flower. I do stamp the sentiment using Blackout ink on the same green cardstock and just trim it down. I know that the sentiment is really small, but I think that it works because there's so much going on with this card that I definitely just wanted to keep a simple white flower among this rainbow background, and I think it ended up being super gorgeous. I wanted to add a little bit of bling afterwards, so I'm just using a few embellishments to decorate the card panel. So for my second card panel, this wasn't the plan, but I decided to trim down the card panel because of that squished area where I might have put too much transfer gel. So I think that this actually works out really well because it really makes the flower and that deco foil panel really pop. So I just trimmed out, I think this is 2.5 inches, and I'm just going to be placing the florals around it. And then I decided I wanted a little bit more of that deco foil panel, so I'm trimming down 1/4 inch strips, and I'm going to be adhering it on the top and bottom of that main large panel. I just wanted to add a little bit more interest because that flower is so large. Once I decide on where I'm going to be placing everything, I'm just going to go ahead and adhere it. I think that this panel just is so pretty. I do think that if I went a little less heavy with the gel dual, it would have turned out so perfectly and I might have ended up with a very different card, but I really loved how this card ended up. Also, I prefer the heat transfer better because it just seemed more even going through the Mink versus the manual die cut machine, and it's just more clean. So if you have a heat machine or a laminator, I think that that is my preference for this panel, but both of them ended up being gorgeous, so I really can't complain. I'm going to go ahead and put the florals together. I kind of did it the same way that I did for the first card. I just surrounded the main flower with all the little pieces, and for this sentiment I actually am stamping it with Juicy ink, which is a Watermark ink used for heat embossing. So I'll go in with my anti-static powder tool, then I'll go ahead and stamp using the Juicy ink. And then I'll use Artic white embossing powder, and you can see I made a little bit of a mess up there because I had spilled it a little bit, but it's a very small sentiment that looks great, and the white embossing powder really pops on the black cardstock. But I decided that I wanted the sentiments to be really small, and since the flower is so large, there's a larger sentiment in this stamp set, but I thought that this worked out really well, and it pops against that blue flower. I also wanted to darken up the stamen just a little bit, so I'm using that separate piece in the stamp set and stamping it out with Blackout ink just to darken it up so it pops a little bit more. Because I used ink over it, it just lost a little of the darkness, so I just went in and added it back in. For this card panel, I'm also trimming it down 1/4 of an inch on the left and right, and I'll be matting this on a piece of purple cardstock. I'll be trimming down the panel so I can mat it on a piece of purple cardstock. And I really thought that really pulled the card together. I think it looked fine without, but I just really wanted that purple to show through to kind of pull in the purple in the flower. So to finish off this card, I'm also adding the same embellishments. I think that it's just a fun touch to add to the card. You can't really see them because they are iridescent on the card, but they do add that bling that people love on cards. So once I figure out where I want to place all those little jewels, I go ahead and adhere them to the card. And these 2 cards are done. And I thought that they were so fun. They came together so well. And I think that I'm going to be using the gel jewel so much more because I have a ton of foil from when I purchased my mini mink that it's something that I can pull out and use for quick backgrounds that have that wow factor. So thank you for joining us for this collab, and I hope you enjoyed the cards. I will see you guys next time for another video. Have a great day. Bye.